The first photo of my child's life was taken in a room I wasn't invited to, a room decorated with ribbons I never touched, filled with people who toasted to a future I was being written out of. They called it a surprise, said I needed rest, said I'd be so pleased when I saw the video. But what do you call it when someone edits you out of your own beginning? There were no slammed doors, no screaming matches, just silence, a clean cut, the kind you don't see until you're already bleeding. She thought I'd swallow it, smile for the camera later, but I didn't. I sent a legal notice instead. Before we go deeper into how everything unraveled, make sure to subscribe for more real revenge stories. Leave a comment if you've ever trusted someone only to find out they were slowly rewriting your life without asking. For most of my life, I'd mistaken silence for peace. I grew up in a house where the television was always on, but no one really talked. My father loved me in the way that men do when they've lost the woman who tethered them to gentleness. My mother died when I was 14, and with her went the soft things. There were no bedtime talks, no shared recipes, no quiet reassurances, just efficiency. You wake up, you move forward. You manage. So when I met Caleb and was folded into the Hartwell family, it felt like a warmth I didn't know I'd been cold without. They were polished, structured, always composed. Holidays were scripted. Traditions were photographed. People said thank you for everything, even the air they breathed. And at the center of it all stood Leona, his mother. Leona Hartwell never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She had a way of speaking that made silence feel like your own fault. She was gracious, yes. She brought flowers to my school on parent-teacher night. She called me darling in a tone that never wavered, but she also corrected my memories like they were typos. You wore pearls to the engagement dinner, not the necklace from your mother, remember? At first, I thought she was just meticulous, a woman of detail, but over time, it began to feel like she was softly rearranging me. Our wedding was beautiful, but not mine, ivory instead of white, classical quartet instead of the jazz trio I'd suggested. When I looked back at the photos, I looked perfect, and not at all like myself. Caleb said I was reading into things, that his mom just wanted to help. She's been planning this day since I was 12, he laughed once, and I had laughed too. Because what else do you do when the water warms slowly and you're already in it? When we found out I was pregnant, Leona became more attentive, more involved. She called it relieving me of pressure, but I was never the one who asked. She handled the registry before I'd even picked a theme, chose a doula I'd never met. I told myself it was kindness, that this was what a mother-in-law did. It never occurred to me that she was quietly removing my fingerprints from my own motherhood. Until one day, I looked up and they were gone. It started with a text from a friend. Hey, so sorry you're not feeling well. The invite said you needed rest, but I hope everything's okay. I read it twice, confused. I hadn't canceled anything. I hadn't even finalized the plans yet. Caleb and I had talked about doing something small, something meaningful. Just family and a few close friends. Nothing flashy. I was still weighing options when someone else made the choice for me. Leona had planned the entire gender reveal behind my back, changed the venue, sent out invitations, and somewhere in those glossy cards embossed with blue and cream, she'd written me out. The event was framed as a gift, a relief. She told people I was on bed rest, that surprises were better for my nerves. She'd even had a photographer there, someone to capture the moment when the balloon popped and blue confetti fell like scripted snow. I watched it all unfold through someone else's Instagram story, my hands trembling, my stomach hard. And there in the center of it all was Leona holding up a onesie that said, Little Hartwell, big future. Caleb stood next to her, smiling. He hadn't told me, not once. When I confronted him that night, he looked tired, defensive. He said it was supposed to be a nice gesture, that his mother just wanted to help, that she thought it would be too much for me. too much. As if my body could carry this child, but my presence might overwhelm the decor. I asked him whose idea it was to leave my name off the invitation. He didn't answer. He just rubbed the back of his neck the way he does when he knows he's been cowardly. I slept in the guest room that night, not because of a fight, but because there was nothing left to argue. The next day, I saw a photo of Leona at the reveal wearing a necklace I'd given her to hold for safekeeping. My mother's locket. She'd worn it like a trophy. And that was when it landed. This wasn't a party, it was a ceremony, one where Leona took center stage and declared legacy over lineage, claimed what wasn't hers to claim. I wasn't just forgotten, I was deliberately excluded. And I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I sat in that cold, gray room with my hand on my belly and realized the cruelest part of erasure isn't the moment it happens. It's realizing how long it's been happening. I stopped asking questions after that. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I already knew them, and I had no interest in hearing them softened or spun. I went quiet, but not idle. The first person I contacted was Nadia Lorne, a woman I had met once at a conference for maternal advocacy, someone who left a high-end estate law firm to start her own practice defending women from domestic legal manipulation. I remembered the way she spoke. Clear, steady, sharp without being cold. I didn't bring her a sob story, I brought her facts. The invitation, the video, the rewritten guardianship draft Caleb had once asked me to sign just in case. The subtle clauses I hadn't noticed before, like the one that named Leona as the temporary medical proxy in the event of maternal incapacitation. The word incapacitation didn't mean anything until I saw how easily it could be engineered. Nadia read the documents and nodded once. Then she looked at me and said, "You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're a woman being restructured out of her own motherhood." I remember feeling a strange kind of calm after that, like being believed made the floor steadier beneath me. I began documenting everything: screenshots, conversations, names. I accessed the Hartwell Trust papers through a shared legal portal, something Caleb had once given me the password for, assuming I'd never understand the jargon. But I did. I read between the lines. Saw how Leona had begun placing herself as advisor to future inheritance decisions, how family control could be masked behind tradition and phrased to sound like kindness. I stopped wearing softness like armor. I let myself feel the edge of what had been done, not just the betrayal, but the deliberate strategy behind it. This wasn't emotional impulsivity. This was calculated erasure. Caleb noticed the shift, asked if I was okay. I told him I was just tired, and I was, but not in the way he thought. I was tired of playing daughter to a woman who had no intention of letting me become a mother. Nadia and I built the case slowly, not a lawsuit, not yet, but a cease and desist notice paired with legal exposure of guardianship overreach. Every line supported by evidence. Every threat wrapped in polite legality. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not Caleb, not friends, not even my OB. Because revenge isn't always about rage. Sometimes it's about remembering who you were before someone convinced you to forget. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and embossed with Nadia's firm name in small, unassuming letters. It looked like an invitation. In a way, it was. A legal invitation to step back. The cease and desist letter was formal, composed, surgical. It detailed the misrepresentation of Ellis Hartwell's maternal capacity, the unauthorized planning and execution of a public event that used her unborn child's image and likeness, and the legal implications of including third-party guardianship suggestions without her consent. It referenced case law, named institutions, listed consequences. We sent one copy to Leona, one to Caleb, one to the Hartwell Family Trust Manager. It didn't arrive with drama. There was no dramatic courier, No phone call afterward, just silence, the kind that sits on the edge of something breaking. I changed the passwords to our shared files, removed my name from the family calendar. I created a new registry, private, with items that actually reflected my taste. I removed Leona's access to my medical portal. And still, I said nothing. I let them wonder. Let Caleb spiral quietly in his own house, unsure why I was distant but unwilling to ask the real questions. He brought me herbal tea one night and said, "We all just want what's best for the baby." I smiled at him and said, "So do I." That week, I posted a single photo on social media, a close-up of my stomach, my hand resting over it, a caption that read, "Motherhood is not a group project." Asterisk. People noticed, including the ones who were at the gender reveal. Invitations were rescinded from the next round of family events, but I didn't mind. It gave me space to breathe. I wrote a speech, not to give publicly, but to prepare myself for the reckoning I knew was coming. I practiced saying words like ownership and reclamation without flinching. I practiced looking in the mirror and seeing someone who wasn't afraid anymore. One night, I sat at the piano, something I hadn't touched in months, and played a slow piece my mother once taught me. It was the first time I felt her close in years, not as a memory, but as a presence. Leona had tried to bury that lineage, pretend it began and ended with her. But I remembered now. My blood didn't begin with the Hartwells, and my child's wouldn't end there. Everything was in place, the paper trail, the consequences, the silence. All that was left was for the notice to land. Leona called first. Her voice didn't crack. It never did. She opened with a sentence that was half diplomacy, half threat. "I think there's been a misunderstanding, darling." I let the silence settle before I answered. Then I told her there was no misunderstanding. The letter she received wasn't a gesture, it was a boundary. She asked if we could meet privately. I declined. She asked again. I told her she could send her response in writing. Her voice tightened just slightly, like a satin ribbon being pulled. "I've only ever tried to help," she said. "Everything I've done has been for this family." I told her that was exactly the problem. She had built a kingdom and crowned herself guardian, then called it love. Caleb came home that night looking drained. He had spoken to his mother, he had read the letter, he wanted to talk things through. I asked him one question. "Did you know about the guardianship clause?" He paused too long, which told me everything. "I thought it was just a formality," he said. "It's how we've always done things." I asked him, who he was. He didn't answer. The next week, Leona's name was formally removed from the Trust Advisory Board. The family lawyer made it clear any further attempts to override Ellis's parental rights would be met with legal action. The baby shower, which Leona had already started planning without my input, was canceled. I created a new event, a small gathering, my friends, my choices, my music. The kind of afternoon where no one wore masks or pearls or legacy-like armor. I wore a simple navy dress and no makeup. I laughed, not the polite kind, the kind that reached the belly. I opened cards from people who saw me, not as a vessel, but as a person. Leona didn't come, neither did Caleb. That night, I found a box on my porch. Inside it was my mother's locket. No note, just silence. I held it in my hand for a long time, not because it meant reconciliation, but because it meant surrender. Not to me, but to reality. The power she once held wasn't taken, it was returned. Not with rage, but with refusal. Caleb moved in with his cousin 2 days later, said he needed time. I didn't argue. There are absences that feel like losses, and then there are absences that feel like oxygen. For the first time in months, I could breathe without asking permission. People think confrontation is loud, that it means raised voices and shattered glass. But sometimes it's a signature on a letter, a locked door, a silence that says, "This far and no further." And in that silence, something breaks. But something else begins. Caleb never moved back in. There was no final argument, no dramatic goodbye, just a slow unraveling of a man who realized too late that peacekeeping often comes at the cost of the person you claim to love. He visits sometimes, brings things for the baby, offers help I no longer need. He doesn't ask questions about the legal filings or the conversations I had with his mother. He knows I wouldn't answer. Leona went quiet too. Publicly, she said nothing, but quietly the ripple began. A few relatives called to check on me, genuine this time, not filtered through her version of events. One aunt told me, with a voice full of regret, that Leona had started editing people long before me. I was just the first to stop allowing it. Nadia and I stayed in touch. She asked if I would be willing to speak at a roundtable on maternal autonomy and family coercion. I said yes. Not because I saw myself as an expert, but because I wanted to stand in a room and say it plainly. It doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like being talked over with a smile. Sometimes it looks like your name missing from a card. I moved into a new home a few weeks before the due date. A small place, nothing grand, but it had a nursery with light that poured through the windows in the afternoon. The lease was in my name only. I chose the wall color, the curtains, the lullabies. I kept the locket, not as a memory of what she took, but as a reminder of what I reclaimed. Every once in a while, I still feel the ghost of that party, the sound of popping confetti, the image of people smiling in a room where I should have been. It stings, but it doesn't wound. Because I'm not trying to rewrite what happened, I'm just refusing to let it define me. The baby will arrive soon, and when they do, they'll be welcomed into a world that wasn't curated by control or polished by performance. They'll know who their mother is. Not because someone told them, but because I showed them. A week before my due date, I planted a tree in the backyard. Not for the baby, not for tradition, for myself. It was a Japanese maple, quiet, unassuming, the kind that turns deep red in autumn like it remembers something. I dug the hole slowly. My back ached, my hands trembled. But I needed to do it with my own strength. Before I placed the roots in the earth, I buried something underneath, my mother's locket, the same one Leona had worn without permission, the one I had once given away out of trust. I wrapped it in a piece of linen and placed it gently in the soil, not to forget, but to root my history into something that was finally mine. Above it, I placed a small engraved stone, no date, no title, just a name. Ellis. Nothing more, nothing less. There was no audience, no photos, no applause, just the wind and the sound of a shovel meeting earth. People asked me later if I regretted it, losing the connection to the Hartwell name, the history, the comfort of family ties. But comfort built on control isn't comfort, it's captivity. And names only matter if you get to choose how they shape you. I've been called many things in this story: naive, difficult, ungrateful. But the name I wear now, without apology, is Mother. Not because I was granted it, but because I refuse to be erased from it. And when my child grows up and asks who stood up for them before they ever spoke a word, I'll show them the tree and say, right here, this is where I began.